Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everybody who is here joining us here on the Emergency Management Associates Network. We want to welcome you all here to our program tonight. We're coming to you from 392 miles west of Kitty Hawk Beach, North Carolina at the Area Command. Welcome to our show tonight. We are welcoming people that have not been here before. We're welcoming our wonderful EMA family. We want you all to feel good about being here. We have a lot of things to talk about tonight, but before we get into that, we're going to start off with our Pledge of Allegiance to the United States and also the United States National Anthem. Would everybody please rise?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now would you make welcome, straight from Washington, D.C., the United States Army Corps Quartet.
Yeah.
Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the
Oh yeah! Come on, folks, let them know it.
The greatest military in the world, the United States Army Barbershop Quartet here, bringing us the national anthem, and prior to that, the host of the Barbershop Convention, bringing us the Pledge of Allegiance to the United States. Now, this Pledge of Allegiance is not to whoever is President of the United States. I want to make that perfectly clear. This Pledge of Allegiance is to our country, to uphold our country. And folks, I wish we could play the national anthems of everybody's country that is represented here in our program. Unfortunately, I cannot do that, but I'm going to say this, ladies and gentlemen. I want to say that we appreciate our allies as well. All of our allied military members as well, men and women. The United States military men and women. It doesn't matter whether you're Army, Navy, Marine Corps, whether you're United States Air Force, whether you are with the U.S. Coast Guard or the Space Force. It doesn't matter. We thank all of our servicemen and women worldwide, including our allies, for their service. May you all return home after your tours of duty end. God bless you, and thank you for your service. Thank you so very much. Folks, we appreciate you all being here tonight. Please, folks, if you can, please give us a thumbs up before you leave tonight. We have a lot of people here from various countries. We have people here that are not members of our program, or not subscribers to our program. Please, folks, please subscribe to our program and click the notification bell. There's a little bell icon you need to click on. When you click on that, a drop-down menu of 3 items will come up. First, the 3 items are all and 2 others. Click on the word all so you'll get notified whenever we come on the program. That is the most efficient way of doing this. I have been through this many times before. I want to make sure that everybody here is notified when we come on the air and that everybody here can participate in our program. I want everybody to feel welcome here. That is the whole objective to this program. Besides being ready for anything that happens. Tonight, I promised you we're going to talk about, main topic is emergency preparedness. Tonight we start with earthquakes. Tonight we're going to start with earthquakes. Prior to that, I'm first going to start off with something else that's in the news. Okay? We've had a terrible train wreck in Greece. We've been talking about train wrecks for a very long time. A very long time. We're going to continue to talk about train wrecks as long as we keep getting these train wrecks literally all over the country and around the world. People are dying because of these train wrecks. Okay? This one happened over near in northern Greece. Okay? Near a town called Tempe. Tempe. Okay, this is near Thessaloniki, okay, which is part of Thessalonia during the New Testament times. Okay, this is ancient Greece, modern day. Okay, what I'm going to show you is not pleasant. So those of you that maybe have sensitivities to graphic pictures, please step away for a few moments. Okay? I'm going to show you a train wreck from Tuesday night going into Wednesday morning in Greece. Greece time. Okay? A terrible train wreck. What happened? There was a passenger train on a railway, on tracks. In front of it, about 11 miles in front of it, there was a freight train, and both of them were on the same track headed towards each other. Now, folks, this isn't good. At least 43 people were killed and more than 80 others were injured in a head-on collision between the freight train and the passenger train in Greece late Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning. It happened just before midnight, in what was mainly due to what they say now is human error. The next morning, rescuers were still searching for survivors in the smoking wreckage using cranes to lift derailed carriages, passenger train cars. Their efforts were initially focused on the first 2 train cars which had overturned and who were the most difficult to extricate. This is according to a Hellenic Fire Service spokesman. Okay? People were scrambling out of cars that were still alive or uninjured. Scrambling out of the cars in the darkness. It was pitch black darkness there. Early yesterday morning. Okay? Wherever they could find holes and they thought they could get out, they did. The impact of the collision left the passenger train's restaurant car on top of 2 other cars. And a fire broke out. A large blaze broke out in their carriage, with temperatures reaching as high as 1,300 degrees, which is 2,372 degrees Celsius. I'm sorry, the 1,300 degrees is Celsius. It's 2,372 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hot. which made it very difficult to identify people inside, according to the fire spokesman. The two trains crashed into one another. They were running on the same rail line for 12 minutes, for a distance of, like I said, about 11 miles. This is horrific. Literally horrific. I don't know any other words to say that. It's bad. It's very, very bad. Okay? This is just another scene from that train crash. Okay? Deadly train crash in Greece. Some of the information that we're giving you tonight came from ABC News. Not all of it. I've been talking about this now for 2 days. Okay? Look at this train crash, guys. Look at that one car in the middle. That is a restaurant car sitting on top of two other cars. A horrific train crash. I don't know how else to say it. A very horrific train crash. I wouldn't have wished this on anyone. I've seen some very bad train crashes in my day, and they're not one pleasant. There have never been any train crash that I have ever been to that was any kind of pleasant. Not at all. With that said, it's very difficult to work one of these train crashes. Whether it's a first responder, an ambulance member crew, a fireman, a police officer, it's very difficult to work in these conditions. Not only dangerous, but emotionally and physically exhausting. Emotionally and physically exhausting. Okay? A majority of those people that were killed were between the ages of 20 and 30 years old. Rubini Lintari, who is the chief coroner of the General Hospital in Larissa, Greece, told Greek State TV, the passenger train was traveling at a speed of 103 miles per hour, a lot higher speeds than are here in the United States when it hit the freight train. About 350 people were on board the northbound passenger train, which was traveling from Athens to Thessaloniki, according to the Greek rail operator Hellenic Train. The crash occurred shortly before midnight in the town of Tempe, along the Athens-Thessaloniki route at the entrance of the Vale Tempe, a tree-lined gorge that separates the North Greek regions of Thessaly and Macedonia. The two trains were, like I said, running on the same track toward each other, and the force of the high-speed collision derailed multiple cars, with some bursting into flames. According to the Greek fire service, it was not pretty. It was not pretty. Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis said in remarks today that the train collision was mainly due to tragic human error. At least 150 firefighters, including some specialized units, and 40 ambulances responded to the scene with assistance of 32 police officers and 15 patrol vehicles. The search and rescue operation at the site of the train collision will continue overnight. A fire spokesman said this hole will continue until every last stone is turned, every body found. The question still stands. Why were two trains headed toward each other on the same track? The head train controller in the train tower that was on duty at the time of the collision has now been arrested. Folks, I told you the other day when we first heard about this, every train has a controller, and that controller is responsible for the trains that he's been assigned to, okay? Whether it be freight trains or passenger trains. Every train controller is responsible for all the trains within his jurisdiction. They sit in a tower, usually in a train yard, and they operate through computers. They can tell where the trains are going, which tracks they are on, and it's all automated. For the most part, everything's automated, so the controller can see the trains going down the railway. This controller must have seen those two trains headed towards each other. It's sad. If he had had knowledge of what was happening, he still had 11 miles before the trains would hit, before they would collide with each other. In the best physical circumstances, the trains had 11 miles to at least slow down and attempt to stop. As I've said before, most trains, when they're going down the track, when they try to stop, it takes 2 to 3 miles in order to stop a train. The passenger train was a high-speed rail train. It was traveling at 130 miles an hour, which means it possibly would have taken 10 miles to stop it. I don't have any information about the freight train and what it had on it, meaning the number of cars and what products that it had on it, whether it be sheetrock or lumber or other automobiles or any tanks of chemicals. We don't know. We haven't been told. Excuse me. Got something in my throat. Anyway, in the best circumstances, both trains could have at least slowed down. I think a crash would have happened anyway. But it's really bad. It's really, really bad. Elaine Galong says, greetings, Ron, EMA Mod Squad. Thank you for being here. Elaine, thank you so much. God bless you. We really appreciate you being here. Really do. Demon Catman from England is here. Thank you so much, brother. Appreciate you. Anne-Marie says, the passenger train should have had the right of way. You're right. You're absolutely right. But neither train should have been on the same track. That's the bottom line. Neither train should have been on the same track. They should have been on separate tracks. Now, with that said, there are what they call turnouts. Turnouts. All along any main line. These trains were on what they call a main line together. At any point in time, the controller or the engineer on the train itself could have tried to pull off on a turnout on a train spur, which is an adjoining track. They could have thrown a switch to take that train off the main line, at least for a while, and let either train go by. But that did not happen. Okay? That's why those trains collided. Okay? The controller was the one that was responsible. The engineers of the train, each one of them was also responsible. They have a control panel in the locomotive, and they can tell what's going on. Okay? If I'm not mistaken, they can also tell that there's another train coming towards them on the same track. Okay? Not necessarily if there was a car or a truck or something else on the track. They don't know that. But if another locomotive is, I'm sure there's some automated way to tell each of the engineers that there's another train coming down the track. Okay? But this is really bad. Angel Grams is here too. Thank you so much for being here, Angel. God bless you. I'm seeing some great people here that I haven't seen on our program before. We have 196 subscribers. Please subscribe to our program if you're not already subscribed, and also hit that thumbs up button if you enjoy what we're talking about. Folks, I have been part of train life for a very long time. One of my first positions as a police officer was on a train which was a light rail passenger train in San Diego, going from point A to point B down the rails, dropping people at various towns along the way. So I worked the rails. I know something about train traffic. And I spoke with controllers. I spoke with engineers, train drivers. In fact, when I went to a train museum up in Orange County, California, there was a guy who was a full-time police officer for San Diego Police, who was a train conductor and an engineer at the Orange County Railroad Museum. And he asked me if I would like to go along with him and drive a train from point A to point B and pick up some cars at this other point and bring them back to where I had been sitting. And I got to drive the train. So I'm familiar with train operation. It's unreal. It's just unreal. Anne Marie is saying, no, Ron, the engineers on both trains do not have any kind of control panel to tell who's on the track. I think they have some kind of automated signals in their cab. I might be wrong. They go by the lights that tell the train when one train's going down the track this way, there's lights off the side of the track that are either red, yellow, or green, telling the train that they either must stop or proceed with caution at a lower speed limit, or it's green telling the train that they can go. Okay? They have that. Okay? They have that. And I agree. Anne Marie says her husband is an engineer and he rode those tracks in Florida, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Montana. That's awesome. I appreciate that, Anne Marie. God bless them. God bless you too. Train life is hard. It's very hard. Sleeping Volcano says Angel Grams is her alter ego. That's funny. Anyway, folks, what happened in Greece is tragic. Anytime we have a train derailment, it's tragic. There's no other way to say it. It's bad. It's really bad. Now, there's one other train derailment that I want to talk about today. Okay? It's down here in Florida. Down over in near Bradenton, Florida. Near Sarasota and Kissimmee, Florida. Remember yesterday? Several cars, including 2 tank cars, left the tracks, and one of the tank cars fell over. Both tank cars that derailed carried propane. No, neither tank car was leaking. They're still trying to pump out the propane from both of those tank cars so they can get them back on the tracks. And again, I wanted to show this to you again. Look how twisted those rails are. Part of it is those 40,000 pound cars going down the railway and all of a sudden derailing coming off the rails can cause some of that twisting. But look how those rails are turned there, okay? There's something wrong. There's something really wrong. Considering up ahead from this picture in the background, you see a train car still sitting on the rails, okay? So that's Richard Smith says they didn't both burn the propane. No, they didn't burn the propane, but I understand both of those tank cars carried propane. That's what I was saying. Sleeping Volcano says trains frighten me. I will never ride them if possible. Folks, let me tell you something. Sleeping Volcano and everybody else. Train travel is usually safe. I myself have ridden the rails not just on a passenger light rail train, but I've taken Amtrak from Denver over the Continental Divide to a stop on the other side of the Continental Divide. It was great. And that's another geological oddity where I went. And maybe one day we'll talk about it. But I've taken Amtrak, and they're usually safe. Yes, we've had Amtrak derailments, we've had passenger train derailments, we've had freight train derailments. Okay? It's crazy. Anne Marie says no automated signals on the engine. Okay? I believe that. I was told that they might have some automated signals on board the locomotive. She says signal lights like traffic lights off to the side of the train, off the rails. And I agree, I've seen those. Okay? Now, off the signal lights do not work, then it's a big problem. And that may have been the problem here in Greece, where there was two trains on the same track. Okay? Maybe the signal lights didn't work. That's possible. But quite often, the signal lights work just fine. Usually there's not a big deal. Richard Smith says, would like me a steam train. Oh, I would give anything to have a steam train. Oh, yes. I would love to have a steam train. Oh, you guys, it's unreal. You don't know how much I would love to have a steam train. I would love to have any train at this point in time. My own train. Now, I wanted to show you something. I promised you that we would talk about trucks on a train. What you're seeing here is a derailed boxcar owned by Union Pacific. No, this is not the one in Northern California that derailed, that completely went off the tracks. This is a separate one a picture that I found. Okay? Notice that the two wheels on the front of this car, this is a boxcar, so either end of the boxcar could be the front of the boxcar. But in this case, we're just looking at the one end. The front wheels, the steel wheels, are off the rail. You can't just have one steel wheel off the rail. In order to do that, in order to have one wheel off the track, the other wheel on the other rail has to also leave the track. They derail. They completely derail. Now, I did bring in an example of a car. I've got several examples of cars, train cars. For this purpose and time, I have some passenger cars and I have a caboose. Okay, I want to show you this. Okay, see these wheels here? They're a truck. There's two sets of wheels here and another set of wheels here. Okay, right here. Okay, you can see the wheels right there. This whole assembly that the wheels are on is called a truck. Okay? If one of these steel wheels goes off the track, it's called a derailment. In most cases, when we have a derailment, all the wheels go off the track, completely off the track. It either tips the train over slightly or tips it completely over like this. Or I've seen train cars tipped over upside down just like this. Okay? But I wanted to show you this, to show you what a truck looks like. Yes, this is a model train. This is a N-scale train. Okay? There's multiple scales involved in model trains. I've had HO equipment, which means HO cars and locomotives. I've had N scale cars and locomotives. There's other larger scales, and there's even a Z scale, which is one of the most tiny of train cars. Okay? So I run N scale railroad when I build railroads. Okay? I want to show you a caboose. Okay? I told you last week on the other channel, before they kicked me off, or before I was taken off. Okay? We used to have cabooses on railroads. We used to have cabooses on the end of railroads. And when these were rolling, these cars had someone in them, sometimes 2 or 3 people in the caboose. They were in charge of making sure that the locomotive engineer knew what was going on at the back of the train. Some of these trains were long trains, 50, 100, 150, 200 cars long. The persons in the caboose of the train were responsible for telling the train engineer what was happening at the back of the train. Okay? And what was going on. That's what happened. Now, in more current times, what is happening? They no longer have cabooses. On the back of the train, they have a device that is about as long as my hand is. Okay? It's called an end of train device. It's a flashing red light on the back of the train. Usually that's to signal other people that are not part of the train system that that is the last car. That device also signals the engineer in the locomotive what the train is doing. Okay? It has the capability of signaling the engineer how the train is doing. We don't have cabooses on the trains anymore. Okay? Now, I'm going to show you another passenger car. This is called a heavyweight. Okay? This is a long passenger car. Okay? You can kind of see that. Like I said, each car has a set of trucks on one end and has a set of trucks on the other end. Okay? And then on this end here, there's a coupler. And it sticks out and makes sure that it can come in contact with the car in front of it and hook up with it. A coupler. Okay? Now, with that said, I'm going to show you another car. I've got a bunch of them. I've got a bunch of different cars. This is a chemical tank car. Okay? This one is marked for Union 76 or Unical. Okay? Unical gasoline. This is a gas car. Okay? This is a gas car, and it usually has a company's logo on it. Usually has a company's logo. And usually not on these models, but I think I'm going to put it on the models. I'm going to devise a way to paint or put a decal on the end of the cars and on the sides of the cars right here that is a sign that says what that car is carrying. Okay? It's part of the material safety data sheet. Okay? It's a symbol for toxic chemicals, flammable chemicals. And usually it's like, I think it's 1, 2, 2, 3 for flammable chemicals. I think, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm going to find those decals and put them on my tank cars. Right? Now, I also have a locomotive here. Now, I left the steam locomotives downstairs in my collection, but I brought a diesel locomotive up here for you. Most of you have seen this. This is what they call a Union Pacific Chief. A Union Pacific Chief train. Okay? These are and have been very popular in the past, I want to say 50 years. Okay? But this is very typical of train locomotives. It's a diesel locomotive. Okay? Very typical. On the top of these diesel locomotives, there's a horn here. I don't know whether you can see it here. There's a horn device right here. There's usually also a light, a flashing light here. Okay? I don't have the flashing light on this. Well, yes, I do. Haha. I do have a flashing light right here. When it's on the rails and hooked up to electricity, it does flash just like a normal locomotive would. Okay? This locomotive has also features that we can tell what's on it. Okay? Usually diesel locomotives are powered by diesel fuel. Okay? Usually we can tell what's on board this locomotive. And in the cab is usually 2 engineers. 2 engineers in this cab right here. And sometimes 3 people. Okay? That's mostly the case. But I wanted to bring this up to your attention because I've been doing this for a very long time. I've worked around trains most of my adult life. Or I have been around them and played around them. Okay? That's what's going on. I do have some knowledge of trains. Anne-Marie is very specific because her husband is an engineer, and that's wonderful. I'm excited about that. One of my friends here has a direct connection to trains. Her husband is an engineer. That's awesome. I did not know that. That's so cool. Okay? But yes, I love trains, and I have a train collection here. I model real life train situations. I have mountains, I have hills, I have cities, I have small towns, I have cars, I have houses, I have commercial buildings, all sorts of stuff on the layouts. And I build everything. Rarely do I ever buy any kind of building, a home or a commercial building of any kind. I take a picture, look at the picture, and build the building according to the picture and the specifications, because I can find the specifications for the buildings. And I usually build it to model size so it fits my train. It's cool to watch the train going through the towns, the cities, watching the train go through the hills and the mountains and go into tunnels and then come back out. It's quite a deal. Anyway, Carol Murphy says he must show us if sometime that would be great. I might do that one day. Okay? I might build a layout here in my office here in my broadcasting studio, so that way you can see the trains. It will be great. Wolfman says, I had more fun at that TV station. I bet you did, Wolfman. And speaking of Wolfman, guys, I had a friend of mine. He was in San Diego and he worked out of Los Angeles too. His name was Wolfman Jack. Some of you might have heard his voice on the radio. He was a friend of mine in San Diego. I met him in San Diego. He also worked up in LA. And was broadcast literally all over the United States in syndication. It was great. Good old Wolfman Jack. Anyway, guys, I wanted to show you these train cars. A lot of people don't understand locomotives or trains, period. That's why I brought them in. I've been telling you that I had these, and I wanted to show them to you. I've had some people even send me trains. Yes, I have a small train set downstairs that I'm going to build into a good-sized layout at some point in time. Yes, I'm going to do that. Don Patoka was giving away a bunch of television stations. They're not giving away, but was talking about different television stations in Salt Lake City. I guess Wolfman worked at an independent television station. That's cool. That's really cool. And Carol Murphy says she loves steam trains, and so do I. I love trains. I really do. And you probably should know that during the time when Harry Potter was so, shall I say, popular, for lack of a better word, one of Harry Potter's, well, honestly, one of the people that I was with at the time, a long time ago, worked at a Barnes & Noble store. In fact, was a general manager for Barnes & Noble. And I got permission to build the Hogwarts Express train. I got permission to build the Hogwarts Express train, the locomotive and 2 passenger cars, and a coal car. I went and got the materials at Home Depot and one other place and literally built the locomotive in miniature, like a third size, and I had the coal car behind it, and I had a passenger car behind that. And I put it on display in a Barnes & Noble store during a book signing. They actually had what's-her-name there. And she was doing a book signing, and I had the Hogwarts Express in that bookstore. It was awesome. They sold a bunch of books. They had people that came and took their picture beside the Hogwarts Express train. They had a grand old time. Yes, I love trains, okay? I build them. Brenda Turner says, I did private security for him at the Graffiti Fest in Modesto, California, just before he died. Wow, that's wild. That's wild. Yes, Richard Smith says he remembers putting pennies on the rail and having the cars smashed and flat. Oh yeah, I remember that too. You have a 40,000 pound car running over a penny, or several cars running over a penny, smashes them almost paper thin. Unreal. Anyway, guys, I'm going to go on here. I have a lot of things to talk about tonight. We talked about derailed trains, okay? We talked about other trains. I have a lot of things I want to talk about that are pertaining to each one of us, okay? Good old Demon Catman just put up a symbol, emoji on the chat. That's one of my favorite emojis. An emoji wearing sunglasses. It's awesome. I love it. Oh yeah. Carol Murphy says, you must show them, please. Yes, one day I will show you the cars and the trains that I have. I have built layouts. That's what they're called. I have built layouts, about 5 or 6 of them during my lifetime. That's how big into trains I've been. And I did it in a realistic scale, and I did it for realism. Never did I ever put a train on a layout that couldn't have been run in actuality in real life. That's how to realism that I was. It was just my thing. Anyway, we talked about trains here, and I'm sorry I got a little bit carried away. It's one of my favorite subjects, as you can guess. But there's a lot of other things that we need to talk about tonight. Okay? I want to next talk about the Ukraine war. And I had a lot of thought go into this tonight, this afternoon. I have not gotten into showing any war pictures. This is in Belarus. Okay? The Ukrainian military launched a drone, an armed drone, and it was launched into several facilities in Russia and Belarus and took them out. One of the drones you may have heard about took out a $30 billion bomber from Russia. Russia is not happy that Ukraine took out one of their bombers, a $30 billion plane. Okay? Things are ramping up in Russia. Ukraine has attacked Russia on a number of fronts using American and British-made equipment, including drones. Russia's Putin has now made additional threats that everyone from around the world needs to be taken more seriously. Hopefully the worst will not happen. Putin has dissolved the Nuclear Weapons START Treaty. He's no longer abiding by it, and he may never have been. Okay? We used to be able to send people over to Russia to monitor what they were doing in their nuclear weapons programs. We haven't been able to do that in a very long time. So the Russians can basically produce whatever and how many weapons that they may, weapons of mass destruction that they may want or need. Okay? They can do whatever they want. It's unknown it's unknown to me and probably all of you what the United States in reality is or has done in the past or even now. But like I said, a Ukrainian drone, and now I should probably say they have American and British drones that they've been operating for quite some time. But one of the drones took out a $30 billion Russian warplane, a big bomber. And that bomber was rendered useless, making things even more tense. Everyone here in the United States and all over the world needs to be prepared. A month or so ago, Russia threatened to take out Britain, to attack Britain, because Russia, Putin, does not like Anglo-Saxons, which he says Britain is. He also doesn't like the United States of America. He thinks the guy in power here has no brains and is not able to do anything, while most of us think that that's the case. I don't believe that Putin would even think of taking a chance on doing something against US or Britain, because then all heck and fire would rain down all over Russia and the United States. If that happened, the world would basically be destroyed and rendered unlivable in a lot of places, and possibly around the world. So I don't think, I might be wrong, but I don't think that Putin would do that. He also knows too well of what could happen to his country and the rest of the world. Now, he's also said that Russia is not afraid of taking the first strike, not afraid of making the first strike against another country. And the United States says, oh, go ahead. Really? According to Russia, they have a very hypersonic weapon that can reach the United States in a matter of seconds. We don't have that. We've been testing those kinds of things, but as far as I know, we don't have them. Okay? We don't have them, which is sad. But everybody should be on their best behavior and get prepared, because I honestly don't believe if this starts, I don't believe we are going to have any kind of warning. Literally. That's one of the reasons that I decided the other day, since we had to bring on a new channel, open up a new channel, that we'd start talking about preparedness. Now, with that said, there's something else that I need to talk to you about. That is this. This is called the Schumann resonance. The Schumann resonance. Okay? This involves electromagnetic particles. Part of it coming from the sun. Part of it coming from space. Planetary alignments can cause electromagnetic radiation. The sun can also emit electromagnetic radiation and plasma radiation. Now, at the top of this graph here, each one box here represents every day of February, from the beginning of February on the top left to the end of February on the bottom right. Okay? You can see the spikes on the Schumann resonance every day here through February. The Schumann resonance, folks, is important, and there's a reason we're talking about it. Okay? A very good reason to talk about this. Because, folks, what is happening? What do you think is happening with the Schumann resonance? Okay? It's electromagnetic radiation. And what have we talked about when it comes to earthquakes? The radiation that's coming into the earth from space, plasma and electromagnetic radiation, heats up the surface of the earth. It heats up the plates. It heats up the plates, allowing the plates to move more easily. Okay? With that said, look at the increase in Schumann resonance here. This is important. I'm telling you, it's vital to understand this. Now, while everybody is not a physics professor, and I'm not either, but for the past several months I've delved into this, and I know a bit about it. The Schumann resonance indicates the amount of protons and electrons that are here warming up the plates, warming up the core of the earth. Okay? What is here warming up? The plates are being held together by a lot of goop on the surface of the earth. I call it goop. Okay? What does that amount to? It amounts to dirt, sand, biological decaying plant material, and all that is heating up with the electromagnetic radiation and the plasma radiation. And that heats up and turns into a substance like grease and allows the plates to move even more quickly and a lot more easily. Okay? Just like this. Take, for example, my right hand. Consider my right hand the North American plate. Consider my left hand as the Pacific plate. The Pacific plate is subducting underneath the North American plate. We have a lot of gunk holding the plates together. Okay? A lot of gunk holding the plates together. And as that gunk heats up, it's allowing those plates to move. That's what causes earthquakes. That is what causes earthquakes. Now, it's not just subduction. It's not just subduction. It's also what's holding plates together like this. Just like the San Andreas Fault, or the Hayward Fault, or the Calaveras Fault in Northern California. The San Andreas Fault running all the way down through California, and other faults across the United States and around the world. Okay? Literally. The Schumann resonance here shows normal up here at the top. Normal protons and electrons. Okay? Normal is like 200. Normal is like 200. That's a scale. Right now at the bottom of this, over on the right-hand side, it's off the charts. It's more like 650. It's the highest it's ever been, the highest that the scientists have ever seen. Okay? What does this mean? It means that we are getting hit by radiation that's heating up the plates. Okay? The scientists here in California, I'm talking about in the United States when I say here. I'm not just talking about here on the East Coast. I'm talking about the United States and even around the world. But scientists here in the United States believe that the San Andreas Fault is going to give way to the tune of a mega earthquake. A major earthquake on the San Andreas Fault. Okay? What have we been talking about when we've been talking about the San Andreas Fault? Times and Science says we have 48 people watching the program. That's awesome. We have 196 subscribers. I would love to have 200 subscribers and 200 people watching this program. Yes, I know that YouTube is not putting up the information. We know they lie. We may have 200 people watching this program. How do I know that? Because yesterday, folks, the number of people that watched the program, even towards the end of the program, was close to the number of subscribers. Yeah, I went into the video analytics after my program. So I know darn well that the numbers that they show on the outside of our program, like we have tonight, that you're seeing, are not the real numbers. Okay? Sue Gameroth is asking, is the super chat available? Not until we get 1,000 subscribers. Not until we get 1,000 subscribers, unfortunately. I would love it. Okay? Yes, it's because we have a new channel and we don't have 1,000 subscribers here yet. I'm hoping that will happen soon. Okay? You can still subscribe to our channel. You can still give us donations to our Venmo and our PayPal. We've got those things listed in the top of the program description. You can still send us donations there. You can also send them through the Postal Service. We have a P.O. box. Please do not send any checks or money through the mail unless you wrap it in a letter. That way it cannot be seen from the outside of the envelope. Or put a card in there. Send me a nice card. A lot of people have. I've got a full box of greeting cards and letters here. I've saved almost every letter and greeting card that we have ever gotten. And that's a lot. So if you're sending us any donations in the mail, please give us a little letter, write us a little letter, and stick a check or money order inside that letter or inside of a greeting card. Okay? We appreciate that. And I want to thank you for that. A lot of people do. I love you guys. I love what you do to me and for me to keep this channel in the air. Yes, it takes money to operate this channel, I found. It's not free. I have to pay for bandwidth, adequate electronics and for bandwidth here, and it costs money. I'm also trying to pay off a very high medical bill because I have doctors knocking my door down, and one collection agency that they've sent it out to one now. It's bad. Okay. Richard Smith says, can I be 1,000 different people at one time? If I can, I will. I know. I would love that too. And thank you. Don Patoki just put our address up here, and I appreciate it. It's P.O. Box 422, Valdese, Valdese, North Carolina. Zip code is 28690. Thank you, Don. I appreciate it. Anyway, that's how you can get a hold of us. That's how you can send us donations, and I really appreciate that. Anyway, guys, besides that, the Schumann resonance is heating up the Earth. The not the Schumann resonance, but the protons and electrons are heating up the Earth. Radiation's heating up, okay? But I showed you one of the highest radiation levels ever, 650 on the Schumann resonance, okay? That only means one thing: more earthquakes and larger earthquakes. More earthquakes and large earthquakes. Okay? I showed you pictures of what happened in Turkey. Okay? I've shown you pictures. Remember this from last week? I showed you a video of a drone flying over this huge fissure. I found out yesterday that this fissure is 190 miles long, 300 kilometers long. It's also 8 stories deep. If you put a building 8 stories high into this fissure, it would fit into this fissure. It's also a football field long, wide. A football long field wide. Okay, that's a wide and deep earthquake. Okay, the earth moved. The earth separated there along the faults. And folks, there's not just this one. There's also another fissure that did not open as far as this one did. But you can see the ground separation for miles, literally for miles. Now, it's not as long as this one is either, but you can still see the ground separation for miles. Okay? One fault gave them what they are saying was a 7.8 earthquake that I have said is at least a 9.0 to a 10.0 earthquake. And when it hit on February 3rd, not February 3rd, February, yes it was February 3rd. When it hit on February 3rd, I gave you all the data showing exactly how strong that earthquake was. We all know that the agencies lie. They will never tell us the truth about how strong these earthquakes are. They never will. They never have. Back in the day, they did not know how strong that earthquake was that hit San Francisco in 1916. Okay? They didn't know. They did not have Richter scale back in the day. The earthquakes that happened in the 18 and 1700s, they can only guess about how strong those quakes were. But of course, they're not going to be honest with us. How do I know how strong this earthquake is? Because the beginning of last year, we had a major earthquake, and USGS said that it was a 9.0 earthquake in Antarctica, around the South Pole. A 9.0 earthquake. Now, USGS was hemming and hawing about it at first. They did not admit there was even an earthquake until a few days later. Then they admitted it. Second, a a few weeks after the earthquake, someone sent up a plane. And guess what? They found a 12-mile-long fissure that opened up in the ice over Antarctica. That 12-mile-long fissure proves how strong that quake was. So we've seen a 9.0 in Antarctica, we've seen one in Japan, and we've seen several others, including an earthquake up in Alaska, south of Sandpoint, Alaska, in the peninsula, that was an 8.7 magnitude earthquake. An 8.7 magnitude earthquake. And now, guess what? We called it. We here at EMA called that earthquake. We had it exactly, because several weeks after that earthquake hit, USGS agreed that that was an 8.7 earthquake. And prior to that earthquake hitting, there was a 7.5, a 7.7, and a 7.8. And then the 8.7 hit. Fortunately for the people in Alaska, even the people in Sandpoint, Alaska, those earthquakes were south of the peninsula. The majority of the seismic energy was absorbed by the water. Not all of it, but a good share of it. Okay? Aveyah Pickles, who's Times and Signs, saying she's keeping her promise. I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay? This is a big deal. I want to make sure that everybody is aware of what is going on around you. Not just here in the United States, but around the world. In the Philippines last year, Mindanao Island, Philippines, we had some 7.4 earthquakes that hit there, a pair of them, and a 7.7. It destroyed one of the towns, Davao, the town of Davao, D-A-V-O, just north of one of the harbors in southern Mindanao Island. Okay? It destroyed that town. They had swimming pools at the top of some of those buildings that were throwing water out of them. Many of the buildings were rendered unlivable, uninhabitable. Several schools had to completely close down because the buildings were destroyed and uninhabitable. We've seen major earthquakes around the world. It's not stopping. It's literally not stopping. We've seen some 7s hit around Japan. We've seen a 7 hit at Kamchatka Peninsula before. We've seen some 7s hit over just north of New Zealand. We've seen some 6s and 7s hit north of New Zealand, over New Caledonia, in Fiji, in Vanuatu, in Papua New Guinea, and in Indonesia. Why are they hitting there? Because there's a huge subduction zone down there. A huge subduction zone. It's dangerous as all get out. 7 different plates moving, subducting one under the other there. One of the most dangerous areas in the world. Another place that keeps getting hit even today, earlier this morning, is down just south and east of South America, the South Sandwich Islands. That's also a huge subduction zone. That's why we still getting 5s and 6s down there. But a year and a half ago, the South Sandwich Islands had a 7.5 there as well. Huge earthquake, major earthquake. And I said then that area in the South Sandwich Islands is going to continue to have aftershocks. For months afterwards, they were having 5s and 6s hit in the South Sandwich Islands after the 7.2, whatever it was. Major earthquakes like that continue to have aftershocks for months and even years afterwards. What happened in Turkey? The same thing. They called the first one a 7.8 and the second one a 7.5. I proved by the data that the first was more like a 9.0, 10.0 earthquake. And the second, the 7.5, was like an 8.5, 9.0. Regardless, major earthquakes, guys, and they're hitting all over the place. Yesterday, there was an earthquake in southern Norway and another one in southern Sweden. I used to live there. There was a point in time when we never had any tremors or earthquakes in Norway, Sweden, or Finland. And the last 6 months, we've had plenty of earthquakes in Scandinavia. We've had earthquakes hitting in Britain, in Ireland. It's going to continue. That's why we're talking about earthquakes tonight. I just showed you the Schumann resonance that proves that this radiation is heating up the plates. It's only going to lead to larger earthquakes. Larger, more destructive earthquakes. Now tonight, I'm going to show you some earthquakes. I'm going to show you the destruction. And many of you have seen this already before. I want to make sure that you understand what's going on. Richard Smith says there's a 3.1 in Texas 20 minutes ago, and a 3.3 in Turkey. Yes, they've been happening. There was even a 4.3 in central Texas yesterday. A 4.3. All those earthquakes are due to oil and gas fracking operations. Those earthquakes in Texas are all due to fracking. Okay? Demon Catman says a 3.6 in Wales the other day. Oh yeah. You guys are getting hit even in England and the British Isles there. Not surprising. We need to keep our noses to the grindstone. We need to keep our eyes open, our heads on a swivel. Dangerous earthquakes can hit anywhere at any time. We've shown that in the past. Now, what is this? This is what happens when a 6.9, 7.2 earthquake. They first said this was at the Loma Prieta quake. It was near the center of it was near the Santa Cruz Mountains in Northern California. This is what happens when there's a 6.9/7.2 earthquake. No, the epicenter was not in San Francisco itself, but further east. This is what happens when there's a major earthquake. Look at this highway. This highway is actually part of a huge bridge in Oakland, California. It was taken down. Yes, folks, it was taken down. Okay? Unreal. Unreal. The shaking took down that enormous highway, and that highway was well built. And it was supposed to be secure from having the thing come apart and falling. The highway came apart. The highway came apart and collapsed. There were cars that were crushed from the upper deck falling on the lower deck. There were also cars that came off the lower and the upper deck that went into the harbor. The people drowned. California has suffered some very destructive earthquakes in the last few decades. Among them, Sylmar in 1971. a 6.6 magnitude earthquake in Sylmar, California. A dangerous place, a very dangerous place. Let me pull up a picture here from Sylmar, California. Right here. This building pancaked on top of a bunch of parked vehicles. Literally pancaked on top of a bunch of vehicles. And this is not the only time that it's happened. Okay? This was Sylmar in Southern California. We've talked about earthquakes in Sylmar lately. We've had earthquakes hit in Sylmar, even during the past 2 weeks. Okay? This is another picture. This is a picture of Sylmar in the foothills of the mountains. Okay? Yes, this was 1971, but it's still valid today. This is another picture here of the destruction of the Sylmar quake. I'm going to show you one more in Sylmar. Right here. This was a hospital that came apart. Okay? Yes, you can see a Los Angeles police car sitting off to the right there. But the hospital came apart. Jay Heflin says England tremors are also from fracking. Some of them are. Some of them, but not all of them. Okay? Yes, Richard Smith says this is during the 70s, 1971 to be exact. Okay? But I'm also going to show you Loma Prieta, the San Francisco earthquake I just got through talking about, with the highway that collapsed, literally, came apart. Here's a picture, close up, of a California Highway Patrol motor officer, a motorcycle cop, looking at the upper deck collapsing on top of the lower deck. Look at the car on the right. It was crushed. The front of that car was crushed under the upper deck. Over on the left-hand side, you see that red car smashing into the upper deck. Unreal. Like I said, a bunch of cars went into the harbor there. People died. A lot of people died. This is no joke. This is going to happen again. This is also Loma Prieta. Okay? Loma Prieta. Now, we had an earthquake in what they call the Whittier Narrows in 1987. It was a 5.9 earthquake. Loma Prieta in San Francisco, 1989, October 17th, at the beginning of the U.S. World Series baseball game. A 6.9 magnitude quake at the time, they later said was a 7.2. A major 7.2 earthquake. Damage? The Marina District, next to the harbor, almost totally obliterated by the shaking. Santa Cruz and Monterey counties also badly damaged. The San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge damaged and completely torn apart. You can see it by these pictures that I've showed you. Okay? The Oakland Interstate 880 highway destroyed. Cyprus, the 1989 World Series on television, coverage of the quake from the very beginning of the World Series, and the game was not played. It was later played about a week or so later in a different place. Okay? Now, I've got a lot to say about this, and there's a reason. All of these earthquakes are damaged. Okay? I showed you the collapsed Cypress freeway structure in Oakland. Okay? I showed you the highway collapse here just a minute ago. Santa Cruz was badly damaged. Oakland, California was badly damaged. Salinas, California, badly damaged. Okay? When did the earthquake happen? Right at the beginning of the World Series at 17:04 p.m. 5:04 p.m. Pacific time. How long was the earthquake last? How long did the earthquake last? The shaking. 8 to 15 seconds. 8 to 15 seconds. And that was the primary wave. After that, there were aftershocks. And the aftershocks sometimes lasted up to a full minute. But the main shaking, the 7.2 magnitude earthquake shaking, lasted 8 to 15 seconds. How deep was it? It was 19 kilometers deep, 12 miles deep. Folks, I even have the exact longitude and latitude of the quake, the epicenter. The areas that the Loma Prieta quake hit was the central coast of California, San Francisco Bay, all the way down to Santa Cruz. Okay? Total damage, $5.6 to $6 billion. That was back in the day. That was back in the day. Do you know what that is now? Does anybody want to guess what kind of money that is now? How about double it and then some? How about $12.2 to $13.1 billion today? From $5.6 billion in 1989, some 24 years ago, now it's over double that, to $12.2 to $13.1 billion in damage. Guess what? The maximum intensity on the Mercalli scale, which is the scale that human beings would normally have looking at them if they were at the epicenter. The maximum intensity is this. I told you it was a 7.2 magnitude quake, right? The maximum intensity was a 9. The maximum intensity of that quake was a 9. Was there a tsunami? Yes, a small tsunami as a result of that earthquake. There were 1,000 to 4,000 landslides. How many foreshocks were there? Back a year earlier, a year and almost a half earlier, there was a 5.3 foreshock in 1988. Almost a year and a half earlier, June 27, 1988, there was a 5.3 foreshock. There was also a 5.4 foreshock. Just 2 months before the main earthquake. August 8th, 1989, there was a 5.4 earthquake. Both of those earthquakes were foreshocks of the 9.0 earthquake. Why am I giving you this information? Because all of us need to understand what is about to happen. Okay? Animals and Humans in Disaster says, remember the many buildings collapsed on the marina? Liquefaction. I'm going to talk about liquefaction in just a minute, and I'm glad you brought that up. I'm very glad that you brought that up. Yes, Lisa S. is not here. I don't think she has the information about where we're at now, and I'm sorry to say that. Okay? She's very good at what she does as well. Anyway, there were 2 foreshocks, up to 4,000 landslides. There were 63 people killed. there was 3,757 people injured. 3,757 people injured. In the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake that occurred on California's central coast on October 17th at 5:04 p.m. The shock was centered in the forest area of Ninzi Marks State Park in Santa Cruz County, about 10 miles, 16 kilometers northeast of Santa Cruz on a section of the San Andreas Fault. The San Andreas Fault, ladies and gentlemen, is a strike-slip fault, just like this. It's a strike-slip fault, just like this. Okay? Originally, like I said, they thought it was a 6.9. Okay? They later said it was a 7.2, but a 9.0 on the Mercalli, meaning a very violent earthquake. Again, the shock was responsible for 63 people getting killed and 3,757 people being injured. The Loma Prieta section of the San Andreas Fault had been relatively inactive since the 1906 San Francisco earthquake and the Northridge quake in 1994. Okay? 1994 was 5 years after. 5 years after the Loma Prieta quake in San Francisco. The Northridge quake in 1994 was down in Los Angeles, a 6.9 magnitude earthquake. I just happened to be there. I was called to go up there after the quake. I lived through the aftershocks, and they were violent aftershocks. They were in the upper 5 range of large earthquakes, very dangerous earthquakes. I saw buildings pancake on top of cars. Buildings pancake with people inside the buildings. All of these quakes caused major destruction and resulted in loss of life. But they are not truly seismic catastrophes. Much bigger quakes are possible. We talked about that. 9.0 earthquakes. A large earthquake happened in 1906 in San Francisco. Another is the example of the 2011 quake under the city of New Zealand, Christchurch. Christchurch. That was a magnitude 6.2, but it became New Zealand's second deadliest earthquake on record, killing 185 people and irrevocably destroying large parts of its downtown area because it hit directly underneath the city on top of one of the main faults on the South Island of New Zealand. Experts say a similar destructive earthquake can happen in California, and it's going to be even much worse, a much more destructive earthquake. Now, as for having quicksand come up, liquefaction. All liquefaction is, let me take one of these boxes that I've got this locomotive in. Let me take this locomotive out for a minute. Okay? Say this box here was full of dirt and sand, a very loamy thing, very loamy soil. Okay? Loamy soil is what we see in San Diego, what we see in Salt Lake City, what we see in Los Angeles, up in San Francisco and up and down the entire West Coast. Loamy, dirt, and sand-ridden soil. We have water tables underneath in the crust, don't we? Underneath where we walk, we have water tables, don't we? Some places have aquifers. Okay? What happens when a violent earthquake happens? It shakes like this, doesn't it? It shakes just like this. You hear that rattling going on here? Yes, I have things here, boxes, little boxes inside my big box here. But what I'm trying to show you is this soil will shake, won't it? And it brings up the water from the water table. Okay? It brings up the water in the loamy, sandy, dirt-ridden soil we have here and where we live. And when that happens, that dirt and sandy area becomes quicksand. And what happens then? Buildings sink, don't they? What the earthquake doesn't shake and destroy sinks down into the soil and tips over. Look at telephone poles. The shaking starts and the telephone poles are moving, aren't they? The telephone poles are moving during the shaking, aren't they? When that water table comes up, it saturates the ground that those telephone poles are in. It saturates the ground that the buildings are sitting on. Houses and businesses and commercial buildings sink down into that loamy, earthquake-ridden soil. Liquefaction occurs when the water table comes up into that soil and makes it like quicksand. Cars, people, telephone poles, houses, buildings, human beings sink into that quicksand. That is what they call liquefaction. Now, when I've done preparedness fairs, I've also had an earthquake shake table. And that earthquake shake table had dirt and sand in it. And during my presentation, way before I showed it to anybody, I poured water into that mixture of sand and dirt. That water settled. That water settled until the ground shook. And the model buildings that I had there, houses, commercial buildings, telephone poles, street signs, cars, human beings, once that shaking started, things fell and it sunk. Okay? Don Patoka lives in Sandy, Utah. He's here in the chat tonight. He says most of Sandy, Utah is moderate to high liquefaction. He's absolutely right. Some parts of Sandy, Utah are just that, sandy. Some places, homes and businesses are built on solid rock foundations, literally. Other parts are not. Built on soil, yes. Impacted soil, or compacted soil, I should say. But what happens when the shaking starts? The water table is raised, because the shaking of the loamy soil brings up that water. and lets that water settle into the soil and makes it become quicksand. And anything sitting on it is going to sink. Okay? That's what we're talking about. Trees, huge trees. Starbright Pam says huge trees. She's right. I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen in Lakewood, California. I've seen it happen in Northridge. Okay? I've seen it happen. It's going to happen in England. It's going to happen in Romania. It's going to happen in Czechoslovakia. It's going to happen in Ukraine, and probably already is, with big, huge boom booms dropping. Okay? It's crazy. That happens, guys. Okay? Now, there was a gentleman on another video today here on YouTube. Okay? He belongs to one of the groups that I belong to. We talk about politics and a lot of other things, including earthquakes. Okay? But he said he was looking forward to seeing this channel when we talked about liquefaction because he didn't quite understand it. And I told him we were going to talk about it because liquefaction is a great part of earthquakes. Okay? It's a great part of earthquakes. Now, what is happening here? Why am I talking about earthquakes? Remember that Schumann resonance that I talked about? Before I got talking about earthquakes, there's a reason. The Schumann resonance shows radiation heating up the plates, doesn't it? And I show you that example here of my hands here, having all that soil and gunk and biological material at the bottom of the plate holding things together. When it heats up, it turns into grease, an oil-like substance, and makes it easier for the plates to move. And that's when we have an earthquake. Okay? Scientists are now expecting, and it's not just because of this Schumann resonance being high like it is, higher than it's ever been. Spikes of the Schumann resonance. But it's not just that. Scientists are now saying that California is due for a major earthquake any day now. Any day. Yes, they have said in the past it can happen any time between now and 50 years from now. But now they are saying even more emphatically that we're going to have a destructive earthquake in California. Okay? Experts say a similar earthquake to the 1906 in San Francisco could happen anywhere in California. We've also been talking about for the past 2.5 to 3 years about the Cascadia megathrust earthquake hitting in the Pacific Northwest. The same exact principles apply to the Pacific Northwest as apply to California. The scenarios are just a slight bit different. We have major seismic energy coming out of Alaska. We have a huge ball of seismic energy sitting there in the Gulf of Alaska. It's waiting. We've had 5s and 6s coming up the west coast of the Pacific Ocean. I'm talking about Japan. Japan. The Mariana Trench area. Down in the Indonesia area. Down in Tonga. We've had 6s and 7s down in the South Pacific. And that energy is going up the Western Pacific. Going up the Western Pacific into Alaska. We've seen big monster quakes come across the Aleutian Islands. They get stuck in Alaska. I'm expecting a major earthquake to hit in Alaska very soon. because it's not going to leave Alaska until a major earthquake hits in Alaska, and that's going to happen. It's going to happen, and then that energy is going to dump down the eastern side of the Pacific, which is the west coast of North America, southwestern Canada, Washington State, Oregon, and California, down into northern Mexico. Yes, folks, down into northern Mexico. That's where the San Andreas Fault goes. All the way down the southern coast of Mexico. The San Andreas Fault. Now, yes, the Cascadia could precede a major earthquake on the San Andreas Fault. It could trigger the San Andreas Fault. We've talked about that scenario too. A major earthquake, a 9.0, maybe even up to a 10.0, hitting up in the Pacific Northwest, southwestern Canada, British Columbia, all the way down to Washington and Oregon, and triggering the California San Andreas Fault. The San Andreas Fault starts up there in the southern area of the Cascadia subduction zone, doesn't it? Okay? So the Cascadia could trigger the San Andreas. We know that. We've talked about that a few weeks ago on the other channel, before we were bumped here. Now, with that said, a similar quake could hit California. Similar in that it could be 9.0 time. Similar to Cascadia. A hypothetical magnitude 7.0, 7.2, 7.5 earthquake along the San Francisco area's Hayward Fault, which is just on the east side of the San Francisco Bay. The San Andreas Fault runs just west of San Francisco Bay. The Hayward Fault is on the eastern side of San Francisco Bay, isn't it? Okay. The 6.9, 7.2 earthquake was on the Hayward Fault. That would cause severe, violent, and extreme shaking along a large swath of the East Bay, the North Bay, Silicon Valley, and according to the U.S. Geological Survey, it's going to be bad. By contrast, the magnitude 6.9 Loma Prieta earthquake that they said was actually a 7.2 caused only such shaking in the Santa Cruz Mountains, the Watsonville-Gilroy area to the north. The San Francisco Bay Area scenario is a big deal. There's a landmark report that came out in 2018. 20 plus years after the 1989 quake. Okay? The USGS and many other agencies got their heads together, and they estimated that if that quake hit today, that at least 800 people could be killed, at least, and 18,000 other people injured in a hypothetical 7+ magnitude quake that's ruptured on the Hayward Fault again through Oakland, Berkeley to the northeast of San Francisco, Richmond, Hayward, and Fremont, California. Hundreds more could die from the fires following the earthquake along the ruptured 52-mile section of the fault in this particular scenario. Okay? 52 miles of ruptured fault. More than 400 fires could ignite. In 1989, we saw huge fires. Huge fires develop from that quake. Why did that happen? Why did that happen? gas mains ruptured. Natural gas and propane gas erupted. Water mains erupted, and the fire departments were not able to fight the fire adequately. Where have we heard that before? Over on the New Madrid Fault. The same kind of thing will happen on the New Madrid Fault. Gas mains are going to rupture, there's going to be fires, and then the fire departments are only going to have the water that's on their trucks, because the water mains are also going to rupture. They're going to have to fight this fire in New Madrid just the same way they're going to have to fight the fire in California, whether it be in San Francisco, LA, or San Diego, or all of them together. They're going to have to fight it by air. It's not going to be pretty, ladies and gentlemen. More than 400 fires could ignite, burning the equivalent of 52,000 single-family homes. And a lack of water for firefighters caused by old pipes and shattered underground water mains could make matters worse. This fault is what we sort of call a tectonic time bomb. A tectonic time bomb. A USGS earthquake geologist emeritus, his name's David Schwartz, said about the Hayward Fault, it's just waiting to go off. It's just waiting to go off. We've had earthquakes up in Berkeley, California. Where does that Berkeley come from? Berkeley is a U.S. university there. Not a U.S., but a California State University in Berkeley. We've had earthquakes at the university. We've had earthquakes at the field, the football field. Okay? The Hayward Fault, just like the San Andreas, is so dangerous because it runs through some of the most populated areas of the Bay Area, spanning the length of the East Bay from San Pablo Bay to Milpitas on the south. Out of the region's population of 2 million, the population is 7 million. Out of the regional population of 7 million, 2 million people live on top of the fault. That's pretty bad. Okay? That's pretty bad. Remember that picture I'm showing you now? Showing you fires in San Francisco? 1989? Remember that photo I showed you of that California Highway Patrol officer checking the damage that happened to the highway bridge there that came out of over San Francisco Bay, the Oakland Bay Bridge, going down. The upper deck of the Bay Bridge collapsed onto the lower deck, and the lower deck collapsed and went into the harbor. Okay? Now, this so-called Hayward scenario envisions a scale of disaster not ever seen in modern California history. 2,500 people needing rescue. 2,500 people needing rescue. Remember I told you the death toll that would be there? 22,000 people being trapped in elevators. More than 400,000 people could be displaced from their homes from either the earthquake shaking or the liquefaction of their homes. And some East Bay residents, East Bay, the eastern side of San Francisco Bay, are going to lose access to clean water for as long as 6 months or longer. The earthquake would cause 8,000 structures to collapse, 100,000 structures to be red tagged, meaning they're too damaged to enter, and 390,000 to be yellow tagged, meaning occupancy is limited to significant damage. Keith Porter, who is a University of Colorado Boulder research professor of geology, he coordinated a report about this. He coordinated the engineering section of the report. This is a plausible 7.8 earthquake on the San Andreas Fault. It could bring widespread, severe, violent, and extreme shaking across a wide swath of Southern California. A wide swath of Southern California. Can any of you imagine what that would be like? Can anybody imagine what that would be like? I'm showing you that picture right now. A wide swath of Southern California being affected. This is no joke, guys. This could happen. This could very easily happen. I'm not joking. The three reddest areas on this map are probably where the most severe, violent, and extreme shaking is going to happen. Okay? And that center area around Northridge. We've already seen what happened in that area in 2019. 7.1 quake. The U.S. Geological Survey published what they called a hypothetical situation of a magnitude 7.8 earthquake on the San Andreas Fault and what it would look like. The scenario could result in the deaths of 1,800 people. More than 900 people could die from fire. More than 400 people could die from the collapse of vulnerable steel frame buildings. More than 250 from the building damage, from the building coming apart. And more than 150 people from transportation-related accidents, such as car crashes. The ground moving all over the place and the person not being able to control their car and smashing into whatever's there, other cars or buildings or poles or anything sticking up out of the ground. Such car crashes are due to stoplights being out or broken bridges. We talked about broken bridges when we discussed the Cascadia Fault. That you can take to the bank. When the Cascadia Fault goes, the bridges in Washington and Oregon are going to be gone. Down here in Los Angeles County, in the LA area, the greater LA area, LA County could suffer the highest death toll. More than 1,000 people, followed by Orange County with over 350 people dead in Orange County. Further southeast in San Bernardino County, it could be more than 250 people die there. We've talked about what would happen when the San Andreas Fault goes in Riverside County. We've been showing you seismos showing Riverside. The seismology says that the uptick in shaking is getting larger. We showed you the seismograms there. Yes, the shaking is increasing in Riverside. In Riverside, there's going to be more than 70 people dying in Riverside. More than 50,000 people could be injured. Riverside is a huge area. Main freeways to Las Vegas and Phoenix that cross the San Andreas Fault would be destroyed in this scenario. Interstate 10, that's in Los Angeles, crosses a fault in at least a dozen spots. And Interstate 15 running from San Diego all the way up into Montana. Guess what? Interstate 15 crosses California and goes out toward Vegas, right? It surely does. Interstate 15 would see the roadway sliced where it crosses a fault. Sliced, moved, non-existent path. You would not be able to cross to the other side of Interstate 15, which is the main highway between Los Angeles and Las Vegas, Nevada. One part of the roadway could be shifted from the other by 15 feet. 15 feet. A powerful earthquake hit Long Beach in 1933. We talked about Long Beach, haven't we? In the past few weeks, in fact for the past few years, we've been talking and showing you the seismograms that have been hitting in LA area. Long Beach in particular. Okay? Light Hype and State Street, just east of Long Beach. The seismicity is increasing. The number of earthquakes and the strength of these earthquakes are increasing. Let's talk about the water situation in LA. The aqueducts come out of the Colorado River. The aqueducts bring 88% of Los Angeles water supply, and they cross the San Andreas Fault. All these aqueducts could be damaged or destroyed. A big threat to life would be collapsed buildings. As many as 900 unretrofitted, unreinforced brick and masonry buildings close to the fault would come tumbling down on top of the occupants. The pedestrians on sidewalks and even on the roads, crushing cars and buses in the middle of the street. 50 brittle concrete buildings housing 7,500 people could completely or partially collapse. Depending on what people are home or in those buildings, but also depending on the number of people injured or killed. Those 5 high-rise steel buildings of a type known to be seismically vulnerable, holding 5,000 people, could completely collapse. From 500,000 to 1 million people could be displaced from their homes. The magnitude 6.2 earthquake that was so devastating to Christchurch, New Zealand on February 22, 2011, because it ruptured on a fault directly underneath the city. I talked about that a minute ago. Placing the worst shaking in the worst possible location, just underneath the main parts of Christchurch, New Zealand. There are earthquake faults in Los Angeles all over. It's not just the San Andreas Fault on the east. The San Andreas Fault losing itself and coming apart on the east side of Los Angeles would activate those other faults underneath the city and county of Los Angeles, Orange County, upwards towards Santa Barbara, outwards to Riverside and San Bernardino. Guess what? You have a major earthquake and many other earthquakes all over that area. It's going to be a very dangerous earthquake. Many people died in New Zealand. Downtown concrete office buildings in Christchurch collapsed. 6-story Canterbury television building, killing 115 people. And the 5-story Pine Gold Corp building collapsed, causing 18 deaths there. 2 others came close to a catastrophe. A 27-story Hotel Grand Chancellor nearly collapsed at the Forsyth Bar building, 18 stories high. Many of those occupants became trapped when both sets of stairways collapsed. Where else have we heard that happen? How about 9/11? in New York. Stairways and buildings collapsing, including pedestrians on the sidewalk and the street, and those riding by in vehicles. So many buildings came tumbling down in Christchurch city center. It was cordoned off to the public. Some areas were cordoned off for more than 2 years. The quake redrew the geography of Christchurch. Downtown Christchurch is now flatter and smaller, with 1,500 buildings in the center business district having been demolished. 1,500 buildings in the business district were demolished. Some buildings were left for the suburbs, and they never came back. Officials also bought and demolished 8,000 homes along the rivers and the coast and the hills and restricted those areas from future development. What do you think is going to happen in Los Angeles? Are they going to completely rebuild like they were before? I don't think so. Christchurch in the South Island of New Zealand is the closest port Lyttelton, Lyttelton, New Zealand's third largest port, suffered massive devastation, incurring more than $320 million damage. So extensive that the rebuilding process was expected to take 12 to 15 years. A huge blow to Christchurch was that the Lyttelton's damaged wharfs no longer were allowed to bring in large cruise ships to dock. The large cruise ships were expected to return to Lyttelton even next year. Okay? How many years has that been since the Christchurch earthquake? A lot of years, huh? What do you think is going to happen to Long Beach? Long Beach. The port of Long Beach, where the cruise ships come in, and the great big huge supply ships come in. Okay? In 2011, Christchurch, New Zealand had that quake. It's now 2023, and Christchurch is still, and the surrounding area around Christchurch, Lyttelton, New Zealand, is still recovering. What is that going to be like for Los Angeles and San Diego and San Francisco? It's not over, guys. It's not over by a long shot. In 2019, and I've talked about this before on this channel too, in 2019, we saw two 6.9s happen on July 4th, 2019. I vividly remember that day. It was like 11 something in the morning in California. It was just after noon or 1 o'clock in Utah. I was at a 4th of July celebration when I heard about the 7.1. Two 6.9s the day before. USGS said that one of them didn't exist, and then they downgraded the other to 6.4. USGS lied about that too. Okay? It's crazy. When those earthquakes hit, that area east of Los Angeles, northeast of Los Angeles, got smacked around big time. Big time. Okay? The 7.1 hit on July 5th. It was the strongest to strike California in 2 decades. Earthquake caused an estimated $5 billion in damage to the China Lake Naval Air Weapons Station, the United States' largest base for developing and testing weapons of warfare, located in the Mojave Desert. just north and west of Ridgecrest. An official told the Navy Times in August that more than half the base's damaged buildings were built before 1980, and they did not meet current seismic standards. The nearby town of Ridgecrest, like I said, south and east from China Lake. Overall, it suffered relatively little damage because the earthquake was located to the northeast in Trona, California. The town, which began growing up near the Navy base during World War II, does not even have a stock of unretrofitted brick buildings like those constructed before 1933 Long Beach quake. There also were very few soft-story apartments. Soft-story apartments, two-story apartments, and weak ground floors built to accommodate parking. So they were parking cars and small trucks underneath the building, which can pancake on top of the vehicles. Buckled asphalt near Ridgecrest was bad. Okay? I saw pictures and video of highways and roads near Ridgecrest and all over Trona, California, torn up. Mobile homes were knocked off their foundations. Chimneys fell and collapsed. Gas lines leaked and some homes caught fire. Many buildings did just fine, except in Trona, and many buildings were up and running within a day or two after the biggest shock. The Ridgecrest cinemas, which suffered a roof collapse in one theater during the July 5th quake, reopened most of the screens later that month. They repaired the building. Trona, which is an unincorporated town southwest of Death Valley, with a population under 2,000, appeared to have been hit harder than Ridgecrest. More than 30 homes were red flagged as uninhabitable in Trona and other San Bernardino counties as well. In the days after the earthquake, there was no running water. No running water. Electricity was unstable, and many residents reported sleeping in their cars or their yards because they were too afraid or could not go back into their homes. The Northridge earthquake in 1994. Like I said, I was there after it. Rochelle in Ireland is saying no buffering. Welcome, Rochelle. We appreciate you being here. Richard Smith, no buffering in Nova Scotia. Rebecca Griffiths in New Mexico is saying, stop buffering, Ron. I don't have any choice. Okay? It's not me, it's YouTube. Right here, I've got a great connection. Okay? I have almost 3,000 kilobytes per second. I've got a great connection. Okay? The Northridge quake in 94. Magnitude 6.7 killed 57 people and left 80,000 people in residential and commercial units damaged or destroyed. 80,000 residential and commercial units damaged or destroyed, as well as more than 5,000 mobile homes. Some 125,000 people were temporarily homeless after the quake. The worst shaking was felt in a small section of Los Angeles County. Small section of Los Angeles County. Okay? Oh yeah. The worst shaking was felt in a small section of LA County, with most damage in the San Fernando Valley. Wide swaths of the county did not suffer major damage. Parts of it did. The earthquake delivered its worst shaking to relatively newer buildings in the San Fernando-Santa Clarita valleys, recorded as severe shaking on the modified Mercalli intensity scale, a strength that can damage poorly built structures. The University Cal State Northridge suffered heavy damage. 2 concrete buildings collapsed catastrophically. A Bullock's department store and a Kaiser Permanente medical office in the San Fernando Valley collapsed. Hundreds could have died had the earthquake occurred during the workday and not at 4:31 a.m. Happened at 4:31 a.m. I was in Northridge that afternoon. And like I said before, there was a lot of shaking that afternoon and that evening and for days after that. A long time after that. The shaking nearly caused a new steel frame automobile club of California to go down. Really? Nearly went down in Santa Clarita. Okay? A total of 200 steel frame buildings had significant cracking, raising questions about the safety of such structures in severe quakes. They were built with steel tubifores, steel frames going across the roof. And guess what? They had severe, significant cracking and damage. Steel structured buildings. The shaking also seriously changed and damaged or destroyed 200 wood frame apartment buildings with flimsy ground stories. Flimsy ground storage or stories is poles sticking up out of the ground holding the apartment building in the air, allowing vehicles to park under the building. They pancaked. One that catastrophically collapsed on its ground floor killed 16 people, most of whom were sleeping. The building pancaked on top of cars. In 2015, Los Angeles officials passed laws requiring retrofit of soft story and brittle concrete buildings. Now, the reason I'm saying this to the world is because all of us around the world have the same kind of buildings in our towns and cities. The same kind of buildings. All of us are going to see this shaking happen where we live. The term soft story refers to one level of a building that's significantly more flexible, i.e. poles sticking up out of the ground, or weak in lateral load resistance than the stories above it, and the floors or the foundations below it, 70% or greater reduction from one floor to the next, meaning collapse. This is according to the International Building Code. There is no LA retrofit law for steel frame buildings. They're still putting them up. Although 2 nearby cities, Santa Monica and West Hollywood, where we've seen shaking because I reported it, they do have that requirement, retrofitting even the steel frame buildings. The Northridge earthquake caused $20 billion in damage and $49 billion in economic losses. A total of $70 billion in damage in and because of the Northridge earthquake. Again, why have I shared this with all of you? One, the experts are saying that a large earthquake is about to hit southern and northern California. I showed you the Schumann resonance. That is showing us that the ground, the plates are heating up, which is going to cause the plates to easily move, which causes the earthquakes. Not just in California and the Pacific Northwest, but around the world. All the faults in England are going to move. The faults in Scandinavia, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and Finland are going to move. We've seen tremors all over that area already, and up to 3.0 earthquakes in northern Sweden. We've seen major and large earthquakes all over Europe. Again, the plates are moving. Earthquake faults are moving. South Africa, we've seen 5.0 and upwards of 6.2 earthquakes hitting in Central and South Africa. We've seen earthquakes hitting in the Atlantic Ocean, in the Pacific Ocean, out in the Indian Ocean, in the Mediterranean Sea, in the Black Sea. They're happening all over. Look at the earthquakes that have hit Egypt and Israel as a result of the Turkish earthquakes. And those earthquakes are also being felt all the way down into Egypt and Israel. Okay? Literally all over. Earthquakes are hitting all over the Middle East as well. It's happening everywhere, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen. It's not just here. All over the United States and all over the world. And Canada, eastern and western Canada, are also being hit. Why am I talking to you? Because the scientists have spoken. We're going to continue having major earthquakes. Yes, the west coast of the United States is slated to have 1 or 2 or more major earthquakes. We've already seen earthquakes hitting all over. Literally all over, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen. All over. What do you think we're going to expect? People injured, more people killed. Turkey for itself is almost a second or third world country, along with Syria in the area. Okay? Major earthquake hit there and literally has destroyed that area. People homeless still. Other areas are just as bad. Romania, 6.0 hit there. 5s are still hitting Romania. Croatia, 6.5 hit there about a year and a half ago. They're still getting earthquake aftershocks. We've seen a lot of tremors hitting over in Italy. We're about to have a major earthquake in Italy, a larger major earthquake in Italy. It's going to happen. The seismic energy coming from Turkey and headed west through Europe is going to be bad. It's going to be real bad. Is everybody even aware of what's going on? Are you paying attention? Are you taking notes? Has anybody here even written an emergency plan? Has anybody thought about emergency plans? An emergency supply kit? How about water? None of us are going to exist without water. Water, ladies and gentlemen, look at this. I'm just about out of water. Yes, I've been drinking a lot of water lately. Okay? How much of us have water here? Water stored so that we have an adequate supply of water to bathe with, water to drink with. What happened in Ohio? Those people are really hurting. That can happen anywhere, guys. Derailments are happening literally all over the place, almost every other day, causing all sorts of damage, chemical leaks all over. Are you ready? What is it going to take? What is it going to take, ladies and gentlemen? I do not want to punish anybody by talking about this. I want to put this information out so you guys have the information, so you guys can make plans. You and your family can make plans, and you guys can prepare. That's what this is all about. I'm trying to help you. Now, with everything that I've talked about tonight, tomorrow night we're going to be talking about the Cascadia, and we're going to be talking about the New Madrid Faults. Guess what? Both of those look like they're going to go, and they can go at any time. We've given a lot of airtime to what's happening literally all around this world, and it's still happening. Okay? We cannot trust this agency called the United States Geological Survey. Okay? You can't trust them. Why? Because they have not been honest with us. Our own politicians are telling the preeminent geological people, the experts, not to be honest with the public. They're telling them not to be honest with the public, and they're doing it. They're not being honest with anybody. And as a result, none of us have the information that we need to do our jobs and to live and to thrive. It's my business here on Emergency Management Associates. Each of you are associates in this plan, in this endeavor to make sure that we're covered here, that we understand what's going on, and we take action to plan and prepare for our families and to save lives. This is the San Francisco Bay Area today. Okay? You see these two earthquakes just east of the Bay Area, don't you? Guess what? This is in Cerrito, California. This is a 2.1 earthquake. This is a 1.0 in San Leandro, California. Where are they? It's on the Hayward Fault that we talked about earlier today. Okay? The Hayward Fault. You see these earthquakes north of there? That's the geysers. That's a geological thermal plant that pulls steam from a volcano to power turbines to generate electricity for Pacific Gas and Electric. Woohoo! Okay? We've seen it happen. We've seen all sorts of stuff happen there. Today, over here in the southern end of the Cascadia earthquake zone, we had an earthquake off the coast of Pistol River, Oregon. This is a 2.3 minor earthquake. Guess what, folks? Let me zoom in here. This is just barely west of the Cascadia subduction zone. That red line that runs right along shore, parallel to the shore here, is the Cascadia subduction zone. This earthquake's right next to it. Okay? That's happened a lot before too. Okay? It's happened a lot before. What is this down here? This is a very strong earthquake here. This is a 6.5 magnitude earthquake. This is Papua New Guinea. This is the largest earthquake to hit today. A 6.5 earthquake at Papua New Guinea. Now, folks, this happened at about 3:36 this morning, Eastern Time, in the middle of the night down here on Wednesday night, Thursday morning, down here in Papua New Guinea. Folks, this was offshore from Kimbe, Papua New Guinea. 108 kilometers, about 90 miles offshore. For the most part, the seismic waves were taken into the water. The water absorbed the seismic waves. The country of Papua New Guinea was spared. They may have felt 5.0 shaking, which is large shaking, not strong catastrophic shaking this time. Over here on the southern part of that island here, Condrian, Papua New Guinea, this is a moderate 4.7. Okay, this is an aftershock from that 6.2. Over here, also in Papua New Guinea, this just happened. This just happened within the last 30 minutes. This happened 40 minutes ago, actually, 42 minutes ago. Okay, this is a large 5.0 earthquake down here in Papua New Guinea. An aftershock of that 6.2. Okay, now you see some other earthquakes here. Over here in the center of Sumatra, Indonesia. Okay, this is this is along the coast. Okay, a 5.0 earthquake in central Sumatra. This is on land. Yes, there are people that have felt this earthquake. Okay, they felt in the surrounding areas to the east. Okay, there's people that live here. They felt that quake. Okay, they felt that quake. I'm just pointing out the big earthquakes that hit today. Okay, the big earthquakes that hit. Over here in the Mariana Islands, this is a 5.4, a large 5.4 earthquake here. This is southeast, 165 kilometers southeast of San Jose Village, northern Mariana Islands. Again, the Pacific Ocean waters absorbed the strength of this quake. Nobody injured. Up here further north in the Bonin Islands of Japan, this also is a 5.0 earthquake, large earthquake. Out here in the Kuril Island just north of Hokkaido. Remember Hokkaido got hit? Okay? Northern Hokkaido got hit the other day. This is also a 5.0 earthquake north of Hokkaido in the Kuril Islands belonging to Russia. A 5.0 large earthquake. This energy is going up to Kamchatka Peninsula, Russia, and over here into the Aleutian Islands, just like all the other large and very strong earthquakes. Over here in the Gulf of Alaska, all this energy is compiling itself. It's compiling itself. And at some point, this is going to break. At some point, this is going to break, and it's going to rupture. And there's going to be a catastrophic earthquake here in Alaska. And at the same time, that energy is going to come down here into the Cascadia area. We've seen it happen before. Okay? It's happened. We know it's going to happen again. Talking about the Pneumatic Fault tomorrow. Over here in Hector, Arkansas, on the western side of the Mississippi, the western side of the center of the Pneumatic Fault. This is a 1.9, 2.0 earthquake over here in Hector, Arkansas. I told you long time ago, as soon as we started seeing 2.0s, I would talk about them. We would show you seismicity of earthquakes. Now it's gone past 2.0. Now we're seeing 3.0, 3.5, and even 4.5 activity over here on the Pneumatic Fault. A larger earthquake is coming, and it's coming very soon. Everybody knows it. Larger earthquakes up and down the entire eastern seaboard of the United States and eastern Canada, because the Atlantic plate here is pushing the North American continent south-southwest. In doing so, the center of the Atlantic plate is rupturing. It's pulling apart. Western Europe, Scandinavia, and Africa are also going to feel larger earthquakes happening as the pressure comes to them. You folks in England, the British Isles, you're going to get it as well. USGS is not even showing you the amount of earthquakes on this earthquake map. They're saying that there's only 250 earthquakes, and over in Turkey, there's at least 200 plus earthquakes, just in Turkey alone. There's 10 plus up in Iceland here that they're not telling us about. And I can document many other places, including Indonesia, with 20 plus earthquakes there. Okay? They're not telling us about anything. Less than half of the earthquakes. And I would even go to say they're maybe even reporting 25% of the earthquakes that actually happened around the world. Because USGS is worthless. They really are. Completely worthless. Down here in the South Sandwich Islands of the Atlantic, remember we talked about this earlier, we have another 5.1 earthquake. A large 5.1 earthquake. Nobody lives in the South Sandwich Islands here. It's cold, it's icy. Nobody lives here. Penguins, sea life, that's all. This seismic energy here in the South Sandwich Islands, it's going to go back up the mid-Atlantic fault here. Probably sometime tomorrow, we're going to see another 5.0 here in the South Mid-Atlantic, if not the Central Atlantic. Okay, that's going to happen. Over here in Puerto Rico, every day without fail, we see earthquakes over here in the southwestern part of the island. Why? Because 2.5 years ago, some turkeys from an agency that I won't even talk about right now ignited three very low frequency building facilities in Norway, Russia, and northwestern or south, no, it's northwestern Australia, lit up their facilities, triangulated Puerto Rico, and caused 2 man-made earthquakes to happen. One December 28th with an 8.0, and 2 days later an 8.4 down here in southwestern Puerto Rico. We're still seeing aftershocks of those quakes. Okay, down here a 2.1, Guanica, Puerto Rico. This one here is just off the coast. This is also 1.8 tremor. Up here north of Puerto Rico, where did these earthquakes come from? This one is a 3.1. This one here is a 3.2. This one here to the east is a 4.1. South of there, this is a 3.5. And southeast of there is another 3.3. Where did these earthquakes come from? See that earthquake fault to the north of there? The Cayman Ridge guys took seismic energy from over in Guatemala and Central America and brought it out here. That's where those earthquakes came from. Okay? So now I've taken you on a little bit of tour of the earth, showing you what happened and what is still going to happen. Okay? I'm not showing you everything because this agency refused to report the truth. Sad. They will never be honest with anybody. Folks, I've told you the truth today. We talked about earthquakes and their impact on our society. Everybody's going to be susceptible. There's not any one person that's not susceptible to these earthquakes that are happening, and they're going to happen. Tomorrow we're going to talk about, again, the Cascadia area and the New Madrid Fault. But Friday we're going to talk specifically about emergency planning, writing an emergency plan, We're going to touch on emergency supply kits and water again. You can't live without water. Those poor people in Ohio are finding that out. Some of them are getting burned because of it. That's sad. That's a whole nother story for another time. Guys, I care about you. I care. If I didn't care, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be wasting my time doing this. We are not wasting our time. There's a reason. We're saving lives. We're going to continue to save lives here. That's why we got this channel up and running. Yes, we had a few days that we were down. We had no choice. We had no choice. Before I end this program, I want to leave you with this thought. Okay? I try to leave on a positive note. Times and Science says I have a massive spring water collection. That's great. I wish everybody did. Okay. Those who died yesterday had no plans for this morning. Excuse me, they had plans for this morning. Those who died yesterday had plans for this morning. Those who died this morning had plans for tonight. Don't take life for granted. Don't do anything but rejoice in the time that you have. In the blink of an eye, everything can change. So forgive often. Love with all your heart. You may never know when you may not have that chance again. Love with all your heart. Forgive often. You may not have this chance again. Don't forget that. This is one of the most important messages that we can give you. Now, folks, I've enjoyed being with you. Again, we have 196 subscribers according to YouTube, maybe a few more than that, I would hope. We've had a great night tonight. 75 thumbs up. I appreciate that. We love and care about each and every one of you. Now, in closing, guys, in closing, there's 48 people still watching now, which I appreciate. I'm hoping that will change in the coming days and next week. I hope to get back up to 1,000 and 2,000 subscribers fairly fast. Please share this program far and wide to people that you may have thought were here before, and invite them back to subscribe to this channel and watch us again. Share this with all your family and extended family, your friends, neighbors, and those that you care about. Share it with the social media contacts you have, and also with the people that you work with. Folks, we care about you. We care about everybody. That's why we're here. We love and care about all of you. We want the best for everybody. We love each and every one of you and your families. Now, folks, have a good night and a better tomorrow. If anything else happens tonight, we'll be back here to tell you about it as soon as the information becomes available. As Walter Cronkite has said, and that's the way it is. Wednesday, March 1st, 2023. For Emergency Management Associates, this is Ron Tyler. Have a great night. We will see you later. Thank you for being here. God be with you. Till we meet again. We will see you around the corner. Good night, everybody. Much love.